What are some really dangerous things most people don't realize are dangerous? A few inches of moving water over a roadway. And while a few inches is usually fine, you can't be sure it's actually a few inches. A road can be completely washed out and look like a relatively minor flood. Fun story, when my dad was younger, one of his uncles told him never to drive into water a mule wouldn't cross. A few years later, he was trying to decide whether to cross a flooded road and remembered that conversation. He saw the next day that the road had completely washed out. He told his uncle about it, and apparently his uncle was drunk and didn't even remember saying it. Lol. Oh hell, Ricky, I was high when I said that. I based my whole life off of that. Driving while tired. It can be just as dangerous as driving while drunk, but many people do it without thinking twice. For context, 20 hours awake impairs you as much as 0.08% BAC, which counts as DUI in many states. A lot of people end up with liver failure from overusing Tylenol. It's not harmless, don't treat it like Skittles. Acetaminophen poisoning is so bad that our school gave us a PSA on OTC medications that contain it, and to always check the drug ingredients to make sure you don't consume too much. I took too much Percocet once when I had a very painful pinched nerve. I began to feel weirder than weird, in a bad way, and went to the ER, where I was told I could have died if it continued to take the painkiller as I'd been doing. I did not know until then that Percocet is mostly Tylenol with just a little bit of narcotic, and it's not the narcotic that could have killed me. Not having enough sodium. Therese always warnings about too much salt, but apparently if you don't have enough it can throw your body totally out of whack. Learned this after passing out and ending up in the ER. Yep, one of its most important functions, along with potassium, is maintaining electrical potential across nerve cell membranes. Without that your nerves won't work. I ended up in hospital because of what they deemed fatally low potassium levels. That sucked. My husband was born with a genetic disorder called Gittleman syndrome that causes his kidneys to waste potassium, magnesium, and sodium. Before we had him diagnosed, he was in and out of ICU with critically low levels of all three, even going into cardiac arrest in the living room once. Since then, he has to take huge doses of these gigantic horse pills multiple times a day to maintain his levels, and his doctor has him a high sodium diet. My mom has Gittleman syndrome. I was reading this thread wondering if someone would mention it given its rarity. She has to visit an infusion center twice a week for potassium and magnesium, along with taking 40 potassium pills a day. It was crazy to hear that her doctor basically told her you need to eat fast food, or basically anything high in sodium. Even with all of this, she's a very weak woman. Strong-willed though. I hope the best for your husband and an eventual cure for this awful disease. Holy, 40 pills a day just for potassium. I'm so sorry, dude. Do your mom also need to cook food with tons of salt to compensate for the sodium deficiency? Eating in general lately has been difficult for her, for reasons outside of Gittleman, which doesn't help. You learn how much sicknesses can really just compound on top of each other, but yes. She's always craved salty foods and she'll add salt to just about anything she eats. The craving has always existed, even before her repeated hospitalizations that led to the diagnosis. Tailgating at 70 miles per hour. Edit, thank you Redditors for the overwhelming response and for the anonymous gold. To be honest, this thread moved to the left lane for passing discussion. It wasn't the goal of my response. My response is more about how a tailgater will dramatically increase the risk of an accident versus being patient and sharing the road with others. 100% of accidents are when two objects want to occupy the same space. And the logic of getting closer to the object in front of you at relatively high speed seems illogical to me. The way some people drive makes me really hate driving. I always point out bad drivers to my kids and why it's bad driving, so hopefully they're not one of them when they're older. I don't know what has happened within the last 5 to 10 years, but it definitely seems like more people are driving like assholes now. It's rare for me to see someone actually stop at a stop sign. I'd even settle for a rolling stop where the person slows down a lot, but even that is asking too much apparently. Like just straight up slightly slow to sling around a turn. It's rare for me to see someone actually stop at a stop sign. I see people literally blast through them. I mean tap the brakes just slightly and then speed up. In Mississippi, the second person back at a four-way stop will often power through on the tailgate of the person whose turn it actually is. I guess they feel like hey I stopped whether they were actually at the white line or not. Garage door springs. Ours broke one night and it sounded like a damn 12 gauge going off. Can confirm, do not go anywhere near those things. When ours broke it sounded like a car crashing into the garage. I was in bed when mine broke, which is basically right over my garage door. Shook the bed like a small earthquake. A full force punch to the face. People have died from a single punch. Also just being pushed or falling on the ground. Human bodies can surprisingly be very weak and very strong. But not as strong as concrete. When I was a kid, the father of a kid in my neighborhood, young guy 20s probably, was tossing a football around with some neighborhood kids, fell and hit his head on the concrete, and died of internal bleeding. Frown. My stepbrother accidentally killed his best friend when they drunkenly punched on over something stupid. He fell and hit his head and died instantly. It wrecked him. He spent a couple of years in prison for manslaughter, murder too I think you call it. The whole time his friend's family forgave and stood by him as they saw him as a son brother. It was tragic and beautiful simultaneously. Poor guy still mentally beats himself up about it now, years later. That's horrible. Eating grapefruit while on medication. Grapefruit has so many bad interactions with medication, ranging from rendering the medication ineffective, to toxicity. It's so funny how grapefruit is so lethal. They were able to put a new heart inside of me with no problems, but if I ingested some grapefruit it'd be a goner. Yup. It's a brutal interaction with tacrolimus, the most ubiquitous anti-rejection medication. I've been taking it for almost 2 years BC of a bone marrow transplant. Putting your feet on the dashboard. It is extremely dangerous. My physics teacher in high school had a lengthy and graphic description of exactly what occurs when you are in an accident with your feet on the dash. Absolutely horrifying. Walking up or down the stairs. The most common accident at home is falling down the stairs. And don't leave shoes or other things on the stairs. Yeah, you know they are there, but does your spouse, or your child? Will they see them when it's dark or they are in a hurry? It amazes me how many people store things on stairs, particularly basement stairs. It's an accident waiting to happen. Sitting all day. I just tore my psoas BC. I sit all day and it was weak as f. I never knew you could tear a muscle from underuse. 2 months of excruciating pain, 3 weeks of PT and I'm finally getting better. But yay, stretching and yoga are top priority for me now. Pregnancy. My wife is a medical professional, our pregnancy was planned, we were educated on the process and what the risks were and what to expect. Holy shit. Between the scans, the tests, placenta previa, a false water break a month too early, a preeclampsia diagnosis and early admittance into the hospital, a heart arrhythmia for mom and poop in the womb for baby, a long and dangerous labor bordering on a C-section, and then a whisked away baby to clear his airway. The entire process is an absolutely traumatic horror show. Then they give you your baby and walk you out the door 36 hours later to raise it for the rest of your life. Brazilian butt lifts. One of the most dangerous cosmetic surgeries. Please elaborate. There are major blood vessels, deep in the musculature of the area, and if injecting and trying to really enhance the area, oftentimes the injection can go too deep and violate the veins. The result could be fat or fillers entering the bloodstream and then the circulatory system potentially causing a lethal pulmonary embolism. A coworker got a barrel last year in March. Flew to Florida to get it. A week and it was infected. A week after that she was in the hospital. A month after that she was released but bedridden. She ran out of FMLA time because she was so exhausted from the pain she couldn't work for months, so she was let go. Keat. She just got a job last month, an entire year after having it, and she said that it was the first time she could reliably walk. She is still glad she got it. That was actually really sad to read. I think people frequently drive way too close to the car in front of them. Growing up, I was always taught a car length's distance for every 10 miles per hour. And while it seems crazy, that simple rule of driving has saved my ass more times than I can count. The 3-second rule applies at all speeds. Try it. I do try it, but then jackasses will change lanes in the space you've given and then you're screwed yet again. The cycle repeats over and over and over. Edit, good gravy, so many replies to this one comment. People who are mad at me for some reason, I mentioned that the cycle repeats, I give more space after people cut in, So stop getting mad for a second and work on your reading comprehension time. That space wasn't for you has been said more than any other phrase in my car, I'm pretty sure. Thanks for the turn signal, asshole is probably up there for me lol.